Hey, what's up, Liron here. I want to show you why you and many others may struggle with smoothing out edges in watercolor and, generally speaking, just getting undesired effects. First, let me start with this. There are no mistakes. There's only experimentation. The real mistake, quote unquote, is if you never are able to learn a technique you're trying to learn. That would be, to me, a mistake, because that means you're basically done. You never accomplished what you wanted. But one of the first things that people miss is water. Water is the life of watercolor. So what happens is, when you have enough of it, you can do a lot of things with it. So if I just bring in a bit of water, it could be contaminated water with paint, and then I come back with some paint here, I will get a smooth wash no matter what. It's going to be a smooth transition. Okay? Now, where people have a lot of trouble is the other way around, where you place first a wash, and then you want to smoothen out an edge, for example. So, same answer, water. If you come back with enough water, it's going to be a smooth edge no matter what. Now, here's where people run into trouble. Usually, it comes down to very timid mixing, and I'm going to switch my brush to a smaller one on purpose. I want to show you something. So, let's say I have this, whatever, yellow ochre color. The colors are so inconsequential here that it doesn't matter. So what most people do is they use just the tip of the brush, and very timidly they put down a bit of paint, and by the time they get the shape to look perfect, and it is time to perhaps smoothen out the edge, here's what they do. They come back either with way too much water or with too little water. Now, if you wait too long for this and you're just coming back with a damper brush, what's going to happen is you'll start seeing, first off, the paint started to dry, so you're not really getting a smooth edge. And what you'll see is you're extending the paint, which is something that a lot of people don't want to happen. Now, one way to solve it is using more water, because what the water will do is, instead of bringing in more paint, it will make a smooth edge like this. Now, I'm going to get some cauliflowers here, because, again, this is exactly what I'm showing you. My timing was off. So more water. Here's what you can do. When you start a wash, okay, err on the side of too much water. That's how I like to do it. So you err on the side of too much water. If you're unsure, especially if it's a large wash, bring in more water. I have my bucket here. I'm just bringing in more water. You'll see more water brought into the wash. Okay, the more water you add, the more of a lifeline it has. And then you can start introducing more paint. Now, you want to go darker, so you may ask me, Liron, but I know more water means lighter paint. No problem at all. Start introducing your darker paint into the mix you're already working on, and see what happens when you place it in. You'll get a smooth transition still, okay? Now, you want it to go darker. Introduce more and more darker paint, and it will still be a smooth transition. Now, here's where there aren't really mistakes, but just cause and effect. So what's the effect of bringing in very wet paint onto an already drying wash? The effect of that is going to be cauliflowers. The more watery wash I'm going to bring into this already dry wash, you'll get cauliflowers. Is it a mistake to get cauliflowers? You can actually really see the pattern here. Is it a mistake? Is it wrong? Is it forbidden? No, it's none of these things. It's just a question of what you're trying to achieve. What is your cause and effect? Now, if you get a cauliflower, you can just bring in more water and reset the wash completely. That's something I'll sometimes do. Just bring in more water, reset it, start anew. Again, you brought some water here. You end up with a cauliflower. It's not going to be as noticeable here because the paint is light. But for example, here, it will be more noticeable. Just bring in more water, reset the wash if it's so important to you. Okay? So that's one way of doing it. Now, some of it is timing. So if you look at this paint here, what you see in terms of how wet it is, look at this section. If I'm going to attempt to have paint that stays very dark and it stays in place, I'm starting to run the risk that if this is too wet, like here, for example, especially, it's gonna, you see, it's gonna melt too much. Here, it's standing on its own, but look at what happens here. This is more of a perfect timing, right? And here, it's starting to get to the danger zone of being too dry. So this is why I say there are no mistakes. There's only cause and effect. The cause of bringing in water to this kind of, to everything here, by the way, more water, is I'm just gonna reset this wash. That is the cause and effect. Now, I wanna give you one caveat, one thing to pay attention to. The issue with blending an edge or smoothing out an edge over existing paint, you may have experienced this when you're trying to blend this, to put, let's say you wanna go gradually from here down here. So you're trying, or maybe let's start here. So you're starting with your purple or violet, and then you come back with some water, and you place the water in. What you'll find is you may have a harder time achieving the exact nuance accuracy. It takes a bit more of being accurate with the timing to do this over existing layers of paint. Why? Because the paper changes its shape, the fibers become tangled in a way. If I don't remember exactly the explanation, but the paper physically changes after water and paint touches it, which is why it's harder to get this smooth transition here. One thing I do to counteract that is using a sprayer. So if I'm going to spray a bit here, I'm preparing, sorry, this is Ruth barking, I'm preparing the ground to go darker. What? That. I'm preparing the ground to go darker here. Now, one more thing. If you're using lower quality or inferior quality paper, what you may end up doing is awakening the wash underneath if you go too aggressive. So you want to watch out for that. So you want to watch out for that, is what I'm saying, okay? You don't want to do this too much. You want to go smooth. So even if you don't spray, but you start with a bit of water, and then you reach into the paint, and you gradually make it darker, as dark as you want it to be, okay? So this is going to be harder to do over an existing layer of paint, and it's going to be almost impossible to do over pulp paper. Paper that isn't 100% cotton is going to make it much, much more difficult, okay? But now, when you look at this, see how this is the perfect, to me, this is the perfect timing. Let's switch over even to a smaller brush. This is the perfect timing to get one of these very strong, I'm just choosing garish, ugly, random colors at random. But this is the perfect chance. Let's get this black actually here. This is the perfect opportunity to mix in a very dark paint that you want to last. So you see, we're getting into that zone where you place clouds over a sunset and they last, but they get a smooth edge, right? So that's what you want to pay attention to, that magical moment where things are, see, somewhat dry, but not fully. Okay, this is too dry. You still can get this effect if you go with thick enough paint. So if you go really thick, it's going to be fine for the most part. But let's say you go just a little bit more watery. What's going to happen is, it will look fine at first, but first off, the paint won't last, it won't be as visible, and then slowly it'll start eating at the paint that's already there drying. Okay, so here's why I say there are no mistakes, only cause and effect, and understanding how water and paint work together. It's the only thing there is. So don't worry about making these mistakes. That's when you learn how to use watercolor. That's when you go and you put some water and you put some paint next to it and you see what happens. What happens if I introduce just clean water here? Look at this crazy cauliflower. Is it a mistake? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But maybe that's what I'm after. Maybe that's the effect I'm after. Maybe I want to create clouds that are lighter than what I have here. And if I do this well enough, and I maybe lift just a bit of the center, maybe it's an effect I like. Some artists use that to their advantage, okay? I hope that makes the point clear, because a lot of people have been asking me about not getting the desired result, getting weird backgrounds, not being able to smoothen out an edge. That's the solution. First off, more water is always a good path if you're uncertain, and it's about learning these nuances. The thing is, sometimes you'll get in a rut where you repeat the same mistake over and over again. That is fine. Mistake meaning getting the undesired result. That is fine. The issue begins when you're unaware of it and you for years just do the same thing over and over and wonder why you don't get the correct result. So the solution to the problem is actually in noticing the problem and actually noticing it when it happens. That's when you'll make real progress. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you want to learn how to paint with complete and utter freedom and get beautiful results like this one and a bunch of paintings I have here on the table, check out the frustration-free watercolor course, link in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, I do want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. Huge thanks for those people who make it possible for me to make tons of free content. There are some exclusive processes on Patreon, so if you're already a supporter, go ahead and watch those, and if you're not, consider supporting me. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.